They mocked her, interrupted her, and tried to destroy her reputation, but they never expected Pam Bondi to fight back, let alone take them to court. Pam Bondi had faced tough interviews before. As a former Florida Attorney General, she was no stranger to political attacks. But this time was different. She had been invited onto the talk show under the pretense of discussing legal policies and media ethics. At least that's what they told her. But the moment she took her seat, she felt the tension. The energy in the studio wasn't the usual exchange of differing opinions. It was hostile. The first few questions were standard, almost routine. Then, without warning, one of the hosts leaned in, voice dripping with condescension. "Let's be real, Pam. You're not here because of your legal expertise. You're here because you defend the indefensible. That's your real legacy, isn't it?" Gasps rippled through the audience. A few stifled laughs. Pam didn't flinch, but inside she recognized the setup. This wasn't an interview. This was an ambush. She took a slow, steady breath. She wasn't going to let them control the narrative. That's exactly what they wanted. "I'm here because I stand for the rule of law. If you want to have a serious discussion, let's talk facts, not personal attacks." But they didn't want facts. They wanted a spectacle. Another host smirked, eyes scanning the crowd before delivering the next blow. "Facts or just convenient excuses? Because from where we're sitting, you've spent your career protecting the powerful, no matter the cost." This time, the audience clapped. Pam knew exactly what was happening. This segment had been planned, the attacks rehearsed. The goal wasn't to have a debate. It was to tear her apart on live television. The next few minutes were a whirlwind of interruptions, dismissive chuckles, and leading questions designed to corner her. No matter what she said, they twisted it, reframed it, or ignored it completely. But Pam didn't crumble. She stayed composed, countered their claims with unshakable facts, and refused to give them the meltdown they were pushing for. And then, just as the segment was wrapping up, the host went too far. "Women like you set us back. You let power dictate your morals. Deep down, you know it." Silence. Even the audience wasn't sure how to react to that one. Pam's jaw clenched, not out of anger, but because of a deeper realization. They weren't attacking her because they believed what they were saying. They were attacking her because they were afraid. She smiled, slow and deliberate. "If standing up for the law makes me a villain, so be it. But at least I'm not a puppet." The segment ended. The cameras cut. The damage was done. Or so they thought. Because within hours the internet exploded, and the people Pam Bondi's critics feared the most were about to turn the tables on them. The clip hit the internet like wildfire. Within hours it was everywhere: Twitter, YouTube, major news outlets. At first the network tried to control the narrative, releasing edited clips to frame it as just another heated debate. But they underestimated one thing. The full unedited version was out, and it painted a very different picture. Conservatives weren't just angry, they were outraged. Comment sections flooded with accusations of media bias, double standards, and outright bullying. Even those who weren't die-hard supporters of Pam Bondi couldn't deny what they had just seen. They hadn't debated her. They had ambushed her. Hashtags exploded across social media. Fracture stand with Pam Bondi. Fracture media bias exposed. Cheer cancel the show. Republican politicians chimed in. Conservative commentators dissected the exchange frame by frame. Even some liberal voices, uncomfortable with how far the hosts had gone, admitted that this was a bad look. But it didn't stop there. Viewers got strategic. They didn't just express their outrage. They targeted the show's sponsors. Within hours, advertisers were getting bombarded with thousands of messages. "Why are you funding a platform that openly degrades conservative women?" Some sponsors ignored it. Others issued vague PR statements. Then, the first major sponsor pulled out. Their statement was carefully worded, avoiding controversy while making it clear they didn't want to be associated with a show that engaged in divisive and unprofessional discourse. That was the first domino. And once it fell, the rest followed fast. Inside the network's headquarters, panic set in. Executives scrambled, demanding explanations. Frantic meetings were held behind closed doors. And the hosts? They stayed silent, at first. Then, as pressure mounted, They released a half-hearted statement about spirited debate and passionate discussions. But it was too late, because now rumors swirled that Pam Bondi was preparing to take legal action. And if that was true, then this wasn't just about one bad interview anymore. It was about holding the media accountable, and the network, they had nowhere to hide. The pressure on the network kept building. By the next morning, Pam Bondi's legal team made it official. They were pursuing legal action. The lawsuit wasn't just about defamation. It was about targeted harassment, professional damage, and possibly even coordinated media misconduct. The network had faced backlash before. They had weathered controversies. But this was different. Pam Bondi sat in her law firm's conference room, surrounded by her legal team. Stacks of documents covered the table, some still warm from the printer. A senior attorney, a no-nonsense woman with years of experience in media litigation, leaned forward. "The defamation angle is strong," she said, tapping a document. "But we can also argue professional harm. This wasn't just criticism, it was an orchestrated attempt to discredit you." Pam listened carefully. She wasn't someone who rushed into legal battles, but this wasn't just about her. This was about setting a precedent. And the more they dug into the case, the worse it got. Leaked emails surfaced. Internal messages between producers and staff hinted that the segment had been pre-planned, not as an interview, but as an exposure piece. One line stood out: "Make sure she stumbles. Cut her off if she gets too comfortable." That wasn't journalism. That was an ambush. By mid-afternoon, news of the lawsuit had exploded across headlines. Pam Bondi takes on liberal media giant. Will this be their downfall? Shocking new evidence emerges in Bondi lawsuit. Did the network plan to humiliate her? The network rushed into damage control mode. Their legal team issued a statement dismissing the lawsuit as a frivolous political stunt. But behind closed doors, they were in full-blown crisis mode. And things were only getting worse, because now a former producer had come forward. At first they spoke anonymously, then publicly. In an exclusive interview, they admitted what many had suspected all along. The show had a history of coordinating attacks against conservative guests. Producers were instructed to push them into uncomfortable moments, to cut them off, to mock them subtly, to control the edit. And then, they revealed something even bigger. They weren't the only former employee willing to talk. Pam Bondi's lawsuit had opened the floodgates, and the network, they were running out of ways to spin it. Inside the network's headquarters, panic was setting in. Executives barked orders, legal teams huddled over conference tables, and PR specialists scrambled to craft the perfect damage control statement. They had dealt with controversies before. But this wasn't just another bad press cycle. This was a full-scale crisis. The leaked emails, the former producer's testimony, the sponsors pulling out, and now, Pam Bondi's lawsuit gaining momentum. The network released an official statement, but it fell flat. "We stand by our commitment to free and open discussion. While we regret any misunderstanding, we maintain that our hosts acted within the bounds of spirited debate." It was a carefully worded non-apology, and it made things worse. Viewers saw right through it. By the next morning, the show's social media pages were in free fall. Comments were turned off. Dislikes skyrocketed. More advertisers severed ties, issuing vague statements about re-evaluating partnerships. The message was clear. Corporate sponsors didn't want the heat. Then came the first major internal casualty. One of the show's lead producers resigned. The press release called it a mutual decision, but insiders leaked the truth. The network was trying to contain the fire, but it was too late, because now the legal proceedings had officially begun. Pam Bondi's team subpoenaed internal records, looking for more proof of coordinated media bias and targeted defamation. And what they found was worse than anyone expected. More emails, more memos, more undeniable proof that the network wasn't just reporting news, they were manipulating it. Then the biggest bombshell yet. A second former employee came forward. This time it wasn't just about the talk show, it was about the entire network. They alleged that this wasn't an isolated incident, that certain guests were strategically discredited, shut down, and ridiculed to fit a pre-approved narrative. Suddenly, Pam Bondi's case wasn't just about her, it was about the credibility of an entire media institution. And as the legal battle heated up, the network had to face a chilling reality. They weren't just fighting Pam Bondi anymore. They were fighting the truth. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every available seat, cameras, notebooks, and microphones ready to capture every detail. Outside, the scene was even more chaotic. Protesters, supporters, media vans lined up for blocks. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It had become a cultural battleground. Pam Bondi sat beside her attorneys, calm but focused. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment. The network's legal team was formidable, but she knew they weren't just fighting her. They were fighting their own past mistakes. The trial began with opening arguments. Pam Bondi's lawyers laid it out plainly. This case isn't about political differences. It's about media accountability. Our client was targeted, discredited, and professionally harmed, not through honest journalism, but through calculated deception. Then came the evidence, the leaked emails, the producer's testimony, the unedited footage from previous interviews, showing a clear pattern of coordinated bias. Every piece of evidence tightened the noose around the network. Their defense team fought back. They argued that heated debate was normal, that Pam Bondi was simply playing the victim. But then the former producer took the stand. She testified under oath that producers were given pre-show instructions to ensure conservative guests never came out looking strong, cut them off, mock them subtly, control the edit. And when she read one particular email out loud, the entire courtroom went silent. Do not let her finish full sentences. Keep control. Mock lightly. Make her lose credibility. That single line shattered any illusion that the interview had been fair. The network's attorneys tried a new angle, claiming the show was entertainment, not journalism, that guests should expect tough questioning. But Pam Bondi's attorneys were ready. They played a video montage, a direct comparison of how liberal guests were treated versus conservatives. One side, respectful interviews, uninterrupted responses, softball questions. The other, constant interruptions, sarcasm, mockery, cheap shots disguised as debate. The jury watched in silence. The contrast was undeniable. Then came the financial records. Pam Bondi's team proved that her reputation had suffered measurable damage. Speaking engagements canceled, opportunities withdrawn, a deliberate attempt to silence her. At that moment, the case shifted. This wasn't just a media controversy anymore. This was a reckoning. And as closing arguments wrapped up, the jury had only one question to answer. Did the network cross the line? The entire country waited for the verdict. The jury's decision came faster than expected. When the judge re-entered the courtroom, everyone held their breath. Pam Bondi sat still, her hands folded in her lap. The network's legal team, once confident, now looked drained. The foreperson stood. In the matter of defamation and professional harm, we the jury find in favor of the plaintiff, Pam Bondi. Gasps, murmurs, a few stunned expressions across the courtroom. Pam Bondi closed her eyes for a brief moment, exhaling as the weight of the past few months finally lifted. The damages were significant, a multi-million-dollar settlement, but more importantly, the network was forced to issue a formal apology, not just to Pam Bondi, but to every guest who had been subjected to their tactics. But the fallout didn't stop there. The show was officially canceled. The network framed it as a restructuring decision. But everyone knew the truth. Advertisers weren't coming back. The brand was too toxic, and then more employees came forward. More unethical practices were exposed. This wasn't just a loss for the network, it was a turning point for political media. And Pam Bondi? Her career didn't just survive, it thrived. She became a symbol, a powerful force against media manipulation. Book deals, speaking engagements, a stronger platform than ever. But she didn't use it to gloat. Instead, she left the public with one final message. It's not about silencing people you disagree with, it's about accountability. The media isn't supposed to manufacture reality, it's supposed to report it. And that is a message no one can ignore. The camera zoomed in on her face as she walked out of the courtroom. The story was far from over, but the battle for truth had just begun. Pam Bondi's fight wasn't just about herself, it was about holding the media accountable. This case set a precedent, proving that no one, not even the most powerful networks, could get away with silencing voices they feared. What do you think? Was this just another case of media bias, or a wake-up call for the entire industry? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe in truth over manipulation, like, share, and subscribe for more stories that challenge the narrative. Because in the end, the truth always comes out.